place the strings on this guitar, save you taking your guitar to the guitar shop and paying a fortune for them to restring it. So the first thing to do is to get the old strings off. Now you can just do this by hand. Make sure that the note's dropping so the string's getting slacker and not going up, otherwise the string's going to get tighter and tighter and snap. If you have one of these handy tools, we saw this in the video about changing the strings on your electric guitar. It's a string winder, string cutter, bridge pin puller, all combined. Quite cheap to buy. Make sure you get a genuine one. It should say, let's see if we can get that. If we can get that in the light, can you see that Planet Waves written on there? It needs to say Planet Waves. That's a D'Addario string winder. There's a lot of fakes on eBay and they're rubbish, they don't work. So worth paying a tenner for one of those. It'll last you a lifetime. So I'm going to use that to just undo the strings. And some people like to cut them. Personally, I like to unwind them. Doesn't matter what you do, just in case of getting them off. So we just go around and slacken off all the strings and come back to you when we've done that. Yeah, and just to say as well, be careful when you're actually pulling the strings out of the hole. These very sharp ends, you get an injury in your finger. It bleeds like crazy, it really hurts. You get no sympathy for it because you can't see anything, but it's nasty injuries you can get from the sharp ends of strings. Also, I made myself a little neck rest here, you can see, because you don't want the guitar wobbling about all over the place while you're trying to work on it. You could just use a cushion, anything you like. You can buy neck rests. I just made that out of a bit of scrap wood. Quite a good thing, keeps the guitar nice and solid while you're working on it. Okay, so we've got them all off at that end. Now we're going to zoom down to the other end. And these are the bridge pins. Now I have a little bridge pin puller here on my gadget so I can get it underneath the pins and sort of lever them out. If you don't have one of those, sometimes they'll pull out by hand. A teaspoon is quite a good alternative. I'll show you how to use that just a second. Yeah, so a teaspoon, but just try and, not damage anything. There you go. And if they're really stubborn, sometimes you can put your hand inside the sound hole and push up from the bottom. If it's too hard to push them up from the bottom with your hand inside the sound hole, which I'm doing now, that one's really stuck, it's wedged in there very firmly. You can use a coin. I'll show you that in a moment. So you just put a coin on your finger and put it underneath there, and push, and there you go. Pulls the pin out. So there's always some way of getting those pins out. And then you just pull all the strings out of the hole. Mm-hmm. Now the next thing to do is wrap the old strings up. Wrap them round. If you don't wrap them round, they'll just spring out and jump back out of the rubbish bin. Get rid of them so they don't get mixed up with the new ones. They don't damage anybody. There we go. Put those in the bin. Right, so now we've got the strings off. And the next thing to do is to look after the fingerboard. Now, I use this stuff. It's called lemon oil. I've had this for donkey's years. It just lasts forever. It's great stuff. Perhaps a little expensive to buy, probably about £6 or £7, but it lasts forever, basically. You just need a little dab. And you can see the colour change, I hope, if you zoom in on that a bit. You can see the colour of that fingerboard changing. Look at that. Yeah. I hope you can see that on the video. Mm-hmm. The guitar itself is covered with a lacquer, usually nitrocellulose lacquer, so it's kind of seals the wood. But this is raw wood. The fingerboard is raw wood. This is rosewood, and it needs feeding and nourishing. You should do this at least twice a year. I quite often do it every time I change strings, which may be every couple of months, but it stops the fingerboard from splitting, makes it look nice, plays well. So there we go. So we'll just leave that to soak in for a minute and then we're going to clean it off. It also helps to clean the fingerboard, by the way, take all the dirt off it. There you go, lemon oil. Next thing to do is just give it a clean. There's a lot of dust and muck sort of accumulates on your guitar. And maybe take the bridge saddle out, because I forgot to oil the bridge. This is also raw wood, it's rosewood. oil that as well. Trying to get any oil down in there. If it's an electroacoustic guitar, that's where your pickup is, underneath the bridge saddle. So there we go. Okay, back to cleaning, and usually the head of the guitar, anywhere that's under the strings, this collects a lot of dust. Give that a clean. Oh, there you go. The nut's fallen off. If that happens to yours, they're not always glued in. It doesn't matter. The strings hold it in. You can glue it in if you wish. I don't bother. Right, and I haven't done that. I'm going to use this product. It's guitar polish. Again, you can buy this on eBay, anywhere really, guitar shops. I think you're supposed to spray it in the cloth first, but we're a bit naughty and spray it on the guitar. And I used to use Pledge, you know, furniture polish, but they used to always tell me off in the guitar shops about that, because this is not the same varnish that you put on your furniture. It's nitrocellulose lacquer and it needs proper guitar polish, so don't do that. This brings all the finger marks off. It even buffs some of the scratches, the fine scratching out. Makes the guitar look wonderful. And we want to go all around. We want to turn it over, do the sides, do the back. So I'll do all that and we'll come back and show you that when we're finished. Alright, so now we're looking all clean and shiny and dust free. The next thing to do is to clean the excess oil off the fretboard. Use a different cloth, the one used for the polish. You don't want to get polish on the fingerboard. And just try and go along. I usually put my finger in the cloth and go either side of the frets. That's where the dirt really accumulates. Not so much up here on an acoustic guitar, because we don't normally play up that high. But further down you'll get a lot of dirt. This cleans it. The oil's cleaning and nourishing. And just get alongside the frets. And I hope you can see the difference in that fingerboard to what it was at the beginning of the video. It's really nice. Wipe off all the excess oil, of course. Some people use a bit of wire wool, guard the fingerboard with some tape, polish up the frets. I don't normally bother with that. It's up to you whether you want to do that. And there we go, we're cleaned up. Now, forgot we'd oiled the bridge as well. So make sure you clean that off. Get alongside it here. Okay, there we go. And again, that's improved the colour and it stops the wood from splitting. It's just so nice. And there we go. That's the guitar clean, polished and ready for its new strings. Now, in the last video we talked about setting up an electric guitar. We have adjustable saddles, we have truss rods, all kinds of things that we can adjust. A little bit harder to do on an acoustic guitar, because if you want to lower the saddle, the only thing you can do is, wherever I put the saddle, the only thing you can do is take this saddle and shape it down. And you don't want it to be too low, otherwise the break angle of the strings is over the top of it. It's not going to be right. So it's more difficult. Perhaps if you're a beginner, you need some professional help. We can adjust the truss rod, and I'll show that a little bit later. But one thing that you can check is if you have a straight edge, anything that's straight, it doesn't matter, I'm using a kind of engineering rule here. If you put it on the neck and slide it up to the bridge, it should be just over the top of the bridge, just. If it's below, if it's down here, then you've got problems. You need a neck reset, and that's not worth it on a cheap guitar, and it's a professional job anyway. But if it's just level with or slightly over the top, there's a big gap, then again that's wrong. But it's worth checking that just to see if you need any help with resetting the guitar neck. There's nothing you can do about it yourself. Okay, so we're going to put the saddle back in the bridge. You notice it's thicker at that, higher at that end than that end, so that's obviously the treble side. This is for the thick bass strings. And just pop that back in the slot. There we go. And we've got the nut. Well, again, we've got a fat or wide slot at this end and a narrow slot at that end, so that's obviously the bass string. You just pop that back in. The strings will hold it in place. You can glue it in if you want, but there you go. So now we're ready to restring. All right, so a couple of more checks we want to do before we actually put the strings on. The first one is how tight are these machine heads. Now, I'm not sure what size these are. I'm guessing about 10 mil. That's That's about normal. Yeah, okay. So take a 10mm socket and just check that those nuts that are holding the tuning mechanisms on are tight. You don't want them over tight, but sometimes they do come off slack. So those are all fine. Just check those while you've got it off. Now the other thing we can check are these little screws you can see, the end of the mechanism here, and if we slacken that screw off with a little electrical screwdriver, then the whole thing becomes very slack and just spins round. If we tighten it up, then it becomes very difficult, almost impossible to turn. Would be impossible if we really tightened it. So you just adjust them so that there's a little bit of resistance, so that they turn but they don't spin round loose. There we go, and those are all fine. What strings do we need to use? Well, you need to experiment with different ones and find out what you like. I like these. These are the Dario. It's a good make. They're phosphor bronze rather than 80-20 bronze. Phosphor, the addition of phosphor to the metal makes them last a lot longer. The 80-20 bronze ones lose their brightness quite quickly. They're good to start with, but the phosphor bronze hold it there for a few months, and that's what we want. I think they have a nice mellow tone as well. Now, I buy these in bulk, unfortunately. I can't show you a packet. You can see I've got 25 sets of strings in here. I've got a lot of guitars. So you just buy a single packet, or sometimes you can get a bargain by buying 3 packs, a triple pack, and you'll use them eventually. They don't have a sell-by date. So I'd advise you to do that. As for string sizes, well, again, people use different sizes. Now, string sizes go by the size of the thinnest string. So the top string here, the thinnest one, is 12 thousandths of an inch in diameter. So it's just, these are just known as a set of 12s, because all the other strings are in proportion to that 12 thousandths, and it goes up to 53 thousandths, which is the thick bass string. You can use 11s. I think 11s are quite useful for beginners until your fingers get nice and hard. They're very light, but they tend to be a little bit slack and they don't give you a lot of volume. Higher than 12s, 13s, 14s, really heavy. They put a lot of strain on your guitar neck, and they put a lot of strain on your fingers as well. So I think 12s are pretty ideal. But again, you can experiment with different sizes. So what you want to do is, go on the website or eBay, wherever you're going to buy them from, and ask for a set of Dario phosphor bronze 12 to 53s. And this is what the packet you buy will look like. Okay, now because I've got my strings in bulk, I've had to take a whole set out. You don't want to do this. You want to open the one packet at a time so you don't get mixed up. But on the packet, the strings will be color-coded, the little bullets on the end. So in this case, it's a gold bullet on the bass string. I think it'll be the same in the packets. Red on the 5th string, black on the 4th string, green on the 3rd, purple on the 2nd, and silver on the top string. But you can see, I think there, you can see the difference in thickness, how they're getting thinner and thinner as they go up. So you can tell, you won't get mixed up. All right, now we take one of the bridge pins, and you can probably see that on one side of the bridge pin, there's a little groove there. And that's where we want to get that coloured bullet of the string to come up alongside that groove, okay? But if you push the string into the hole, and then push the bridge pin into the hole after it, as you tighten the string, the bullet will come under the pin and it'll push the pin up out of the hole. Some people I've known even hammer the pins in. You damage your guitar if you do that. So that's not what we do. So I'll show you a little trick. Not everybody knows this. But what we want to do is we want to get the bullet to come up the side of the pin. So it's not underneath, it's not pushing it out, but it's jamming the pin in the hole. And I'll show you how to do that. Now you can see the way that the bullet's held on, the string's sort of wound back on itself to about this point here. If you look carefully, you'll see there's a backward wind there. Go to that point and put a kink, and I'm talking about a real kink in the string like that. Okay. Now what happens now is that when we put the pin in the hole, that comes up the side of the peg like that and jams the peg in the hole, and it doesn't push it out. So we'll go to the other end and we'll have a look and see how we do that. Alright, so we'll put that string with a kink in it into the hole, put the pin with the slot towards the front into the hole, and we just put it in partially and then pull up on the string, and you can see there's the kink is there. It's come right up out of the hole almost. So I know that the bullet on the end of the string is at the side of the pin. And just push the pin in lightly. Don't need to hammer it in, don't need to push it hard. That's fine, and it's not going to go anywhere. Now if you want to check, you can put your hand inside the sound hole and you can feel, and I can feel that bullet is actually at the side of the pin and not underneath it. So no matter how hard I pull, the pin's not going to come out. I'm jerking it about a little bit, but when I'm pulling really hard on that, and it's staying in position. So we'll do another one. This is the 5th string, it's red coloured. Put a nice kink in it like that. Take your pin, find the slot, get the slot at the front, push the thing into the hole. Don't push the pin in too far. Pull the string back out again. I can see where the winds are, where I put the kink. It's actually sticking out the top of the hole. And just push that in lightly, and there you go. It's locked in the hole. And again, I can put my hand inside the sound hole and I can feel that that's up the side of the pin. So we'll put all the strings in here before we do them at the other end, just so that we can put our hand inside the sound hole and check that we've got them in the right place. Once you've done it a few times, you've had some practice, you'll be able to feel and tell, and you won't need to do that. So make sure you get it in the right hole, slot at the front, pull the string, push and there we go. Sometimes your bass string pin will be a little bit higher than the others because the string's thicker, the pin can't get quite so far into the hole. But you can see I'm pulling on them really hard here, and they're wedged in there, they're not coming up. So we've got them nice and firm at that end. So now we'll go and see what we do at the other end. A couple of tricks there as well. Now what we want to do is we want to turn the tuning peg so the holes are lined up, pointing down the neck of the guitar, so that we can take the string, push it straight through the hole, and it's pointing down the neck. And then how much slack do we need to allow? Well, I'm pulling the string tight, I'm going to the next tuning peg, and again I'm putting a kink in the string. And this time it's a real fish hook. I'm bending it right back on itself like that. And if I pull that back to the tuning peg, that's about the right amount of slack. We want to get maybe 3 or 4 winds around the tuning peg, and that'll hold it in place. Now some people do a Luthiers knot, wrap the strings over each other. It's not necessary. We try and get the winds to go one under another, all the way down the tuner, and I'll show you why. Okay, now the shape of those tuning pegs is not, you might think it's a cylinder like this with a hole in the middle for the string to go through, but it's not. It's what I call a capstan shape, like the thing that they tie ships up to. So it's got a waist like this, the hole's in the middle there. Now what happens is the string goes through the hole, and then the winds go one under the other like this as you wind the string round and round. And as the tension comes on the string, because it's a slope, it tends to pull those winds up the capstan, and they all slide up towards the center of the string, and you end up with them jamming themselves together and jamming the string in the hole. All right, so pull that back, and again you can do this by hand. Don't worry about it going in the slots. You can do it I'll do it by hand to start with, and it's quicker with the string winder. But just keep a bit of tension on the string. I'm pulling against it so that it feeds it onto the capstan shape. If this is going to keep catching and flopping around everywhere, just bend it up. Very bendy, these strings. Get it out the way. And then I'm pushing it down so that the next loop or the next wind goes underneath the one before all the way. And once the tension comes on, those winds will all slide up together and they'll jam the string firmly on the tuning peg. Now I'm only going to get a couple of winds here, but I'm not in tension yet, and I don't want to be in tension. I'm putting it in the slot, and now it's just enough tension to stop the string flopping around everywhere. I've already got a couple of winds. I'll have 3 or 4 by the time I've got that tuned up to full tension. And then we'll do the other strings, and then I'll show you something that's unique to this video that you won't see on any other string changing video. Alright, so 5th string, go to the next tuning peg, that's your measure, pull it back. If you have a string winder, then by all means use it. It's a lot quicker. I like to bend the floppy end of the string up so it doesn't keep hitting me in the eye. Basically, just bend it up a bit more, that's better. And then just wind it on, just guiding the winds. If you can get a close-up of that, you can usually see them sliding up together. They're a bit wide apart to start with. As the tension comes on the string, so the winds all nip together like that and hold themselves in place. Don't forget to put it in the correct slot on the nut. And that's holding our nut in place as well. Remember, that was loose before. And now we come to the 4th string, and unfortunately we don't have another tuning peg to measure. Well, just imagine that it would be there if there was one. It's not an exact science. There's lots of other ways of measuring it, but this is a useful rule of thumb. And there you go, there's my kink, and off we go, the string winder again. Now here's what you won't see in any other video, and I've watched lots of videos on YouTube. Guitar luthiers, guitar shops, professionals, and they all go like this: 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's the order the string up in, which sounds logical, but there's a problem with it. Because if you string up the 3rd string next, watch what happens. It gets in the way of the 2nd string and the 1st string. So it's crazy. I don't know why they do this. I never do that. So we do 6, 5, 4, but then we do 1, 2, 3. We start from here, and then having attached a string to here, this is quite clear, and this is quite clear. If you put the 3rd string on here, you're blocking up the 1st and 2nd strings. So I wouldn't advise doing that. Now, here's something I should have said before. Make sure that the strings all wind to the inside, that is, not to the outside of the head. See how they're on the inside, the inside, the inside towards this end. And the same with these. Don't turn the strings so that they're winding up the outside of the tuning peg. Make sure that that's the wrong way. So we want to do it that way, so the string goes on the inside of the tuning peg. I think that's, have I explained that correctly? Okay, so I'll get these on, and we'll come back and show you what to do next. All right, well, we've got the strings on. What a mess, mind you don't poke yourself in the eye. With all those loose ends, but we don't want to cut those off yet, because you might find that one of the strings starts slipping. It happens occasionally, especially on the thinner top strings, and we can always add a couple of winds onto it. It's not ideal, but at least it's better if once you've cut it off, you've had it. So you just put a tuner on, and what I'm going to do is bring it up slowly to tune. So the bass string, should know all this by now, is E, so I'm just going to tune it up to D, which is a couple of notes lower. The 5th string is A, so I'm going to tune it up to G, which is a couple of semitones lower. The 4th string is a D. Make sure you don't go up an octave and tighten the string and snap it. So D, so that would be C as before D. So there we go, C. The 3rd string is G. So tune it up to F. The 2nd string is B. So I'll tune it up to A. And the top string is E. So again, tuned up to D. Doesn't have to be exact, something like around about there. So now we're coming into tune kind of in a balanced way across the neck, not putting all the tension on one string. And what we want to do next is stretch the strings. Okay, so now don't be too rough about this. Some people just pulling the strings off. Then just go along the length of the string, give it a little tug, helps to take some of the stretch out of it. They'll still continue to stretch anyway. You won't get your guitar staying in tune. It'll be a couple of days before it all settles down. You'll need to keep retuning it, but it'll gradually get stable. And just pull a little bit on the strings, take a little bit of that initial stretch out of them. There we go, and now we'll tune up to pitch. But basically the neck of the guitar doesn't really want to be flat, because if you have strings lying on here and you press down on this string when you're fretting a chord, then it'll tend to hit the frets higher up and the string will buzz. You can even have a neck that's got a bit of a hump in it. Well, obviously, if you press down on the string here, it's going to hit the frets there. What we need is a slight, and I'm exaggerating it, the strings to be lying along the neck needs to be a little bit concave, so that when you press down here, they don't contact the frets higher up the neck. But it's very slight, it's very, very slight. I've exaggerated it ridiculously there. And we want a little bit of bend in the neck, and we can adjust that on an acoustic guitar as well. So what we want to do is take the nut out of the equation. So if we take a capo and put it on at the first fret, then that takes the nut out of the equation. And then we want to press down, let's say around the 14th fret. Now most guitars, 12th fret, 14th is where the guitar neck joins the body. So anywhere on this part of the fingerboard will do. And we press down on the string, and then we want to measure how much movement there is between the string and the top of the fret, around about the 7th fret, around about in the middle of that. Okay, so I can see that string's just moving. It's making a noise when I tap it, which means it's not resting on the fret. But what we want is about 10/1000ths of an inch. So I'm using a feeler gauge here. Now, if you can slide that in without it actually lifting the string, around about the 7th fret, 9th fret, somewhere around there. And it's just touching the string. So that's a nice low action. It's not buzzing. I know when I play it, it isn't. If you don't have a feeler gauge, a business card will do fine. Just notice if it goes in without moving the string. You don't have to push it. It doesn't push the string out of the way. If it's very slack, then you've got too much bend in your neck. If it's very tight, then your neck's too flat and you need to put a bit of bend back in it, and I'll show you how to do that. Okay, well, inside the guitar neck, there's what's called a truss rod. It's a metal rod that runs right down the whole length of the neck. Now, the strings are trying to pull the neck up into a bend here. They're fastened at the bridge end, they're fastened on the head of the guitar, and they're taut and they're pulling the guitar up. But the truss rod is pulling against the strings and straightening the neck out. So the strings are trying to bend the neck and the truss rod's trying to straighten the neck. So this is how we can do an adjustment. Now, the access to the truss rod on most acoustic guitars is just inside the sound hole. You can see there's an Allen bolt there, that's the end of the truss rod. And you need an Allen key, which you should get with the guitar. You will if it's a new guitar, certainly. Or any Allen key that fits that Allen bolt. It goes in there. And now we can turn the truss rod. We tighten the truss rod so that is turn it clockwise. Imagine if you're screwing in a screw or putting the lid on a jar, you turn it that way to tighten it. So if we turn it that way towards the right, then we'll be tightening the truss rod and straightening the neck out, and we'll have less gap under the strings in the middle. On the other hand, if we turn it anti-clockwise or to the left, imagine you're unscrewing something and taking the lid off a jar, then we're slackening off the truss rod and we're allowing the strings to bend the neck up. So if we need more bend, we turn it to the left. If we need less bend, we need a straighter neck, we turn it to the right. Now, it's important to do this a little bit at a time. Don't turn it more than a quarter of a turn at the most, maybe an eighth of a turn. A little bit does quite a lot. And I'm not going to turn this one because the guitar's perfectly set up, but leave it for a while. Once you've just given it a little turn, an eighth of a turn, leave it for a while. Let the neck settle. It takes a while sometimes for it to bend. Come back and do your measurements again. Put your capo on the first fret, press it down somewhere where the fingerboard's over the body of the guitar. Measure that gap in the middle and make sure that's about 0.010 of an inch. And then, if necessary, do some further adjustment, a little bit at a time. All right, so it was important to do all those measurements and all those adjustments with the strings in tension, so that, because the tension obviously affects how much the neck bends. But once we're satisfied with that, and once we're satisfied that the strings are not slipping, then we can cut off the spare ends. And what we want to do, you can use a pair of pliers, anything you like. I'm using my string cutter on the handy multi-tool. You just go as close as possible to the machine head and cut it off, and make sure that you don't accidentally cut through the string or an adjacent string. Careful what you're doing. I usually put it on there, slide it up the string till it gets as close as it can possibly be. They're quite sharp ends, the leaves, so we want them to be as short as possible. You don't keep catching our fingers on them or anything like that. And just snip them off. And as soon as you've snipped them off, throw them away so they don't injure anyone. And there we go, neat. Okay, well, I've tuned up a few times now and it's getting a bit more stable, and just playing with my fingernail. It's already a noticeable improvement in volume, in the brightness and the tone of the guitar. Strings actually play a very big part in what your guitar sounds like. On an electric, it's a lot to do with the pickups and the amplifier that you're using. Strings are maybe not quite so important, but on an acoustic guitar, strings are a big part of your sound. So good idea to change them regularly. If you play every day, a couple of months is absolutely maximum. And anytime you notice that they're sounding a bit dead, but you'll find that it's just like getting a new guitar again. It's really worth doing, and it's good fun.